Hello, I'm Nadia Jordana, and you're watching In the Author's Corner. My guest, Sarah Kreischer, is the author of The Confidence to Speak. It's an exciting new book, and one of the things I want to ask her is something she mentions in the book about fear of speaking. She said, "There's no such thing as a fear of speaking." I want to hear more about that. I'll bet you do too. Let's go talk to Sarah. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nadia.
It's so good to have you here.
Well, it's fun to be here. I'm excited to talk with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about your book. It's called The Confidence to Speak. And how did you approach writing this book initially when you first got the idea?
Well, when I first got the idea to write the book, it was going to be everything I ever learned about speaking. It was going to be this big book full of knowledge, and I was going to show the world how smart I was. And I honestly, I got 23,000 words in, and I couldn't bear to read my own words. It was so boring. So I had to put the brakes on, and I had to reevaluate what I was doing. So thankfully the book has morphed in the way that it's come about.
Well, how long from that idea that you got initially did it take for you to have real books right in your hands?
It's taken about 5 years. And I will say the idea of it taking that long, if you had told me at the very beginning, Sarah, this is going to take 5 years, I would have said, it's not for me. I'm not going to put that much time into a book. If I'm going to write a book, I'm going to write it in 6 months and it's going to be done. But that's not how it went for me. I would write for a while, a few months, and then I would give up completely. And I'd say, I can't do this. And then I'd get inspired again, and this idea of writing the book would never go away. So I kept kind of pecking away at it. And this year, with COVID happening, I had a bit more free time on my hands due to a lot of my speaking engagements canceling. And I got to look at it differently with fresh eyes.
Were those things the biggest inspiration or the biggest push towards writing the book, or was it something else?
You know, I what I wanted for this book to be was somewhat of a legacy piece for me. Now, the word legacy sounds really big and meaningful, and really what I wanted to do was leave something behind so that long after I'm gone, someone could pick up this book and say, oh, I understand who Sarah was, and I understand the imprint that she made in the world. So that's really where it all began. And then along the way, I think what I really wanted this book to be was something of an inspiration, and at the same time something that people could really take something away from and value the learning that came to me in really hard ways throughout life. So yeah, it's the book became something completely different than what I originally thought, and mostly it's about fear.
You know, these books tend to have a life of their own. Once you give them the opportunity to be born, they do take on this life and become something a little different than what you expected. Who did you end up writing this for? Did that change? Who's your audience?
Great question. Initially, I was like, I'm going to write this for leaders, and I'm going to make this book something that they can use almost like a school textbook. And then it kind of, along with the change of what this book was going to be, I decided, who I'm really writing this book to is anyone who's ever said to themselves, I just don't feel like I can say what I need to say. And so in a sense, I'm writing it for everyone and ultimately writing it for myself because I've struggled along the way and still do at times with being able to have the courage to say what I need to say. And it's just my life's lessons and reminders of that it's good to be able to speak your truth and to be able to get those words and ideas out into the world.
And I agree with that 100%. You included stories in the book. What's the reason for that?
Well, the stories, I thought to myself, if I was reading this book, I wouldn't want to take just Sarah's words for all of for all of this lesson and hard knocks type stuff. I wouldn't want to be the reader saying, well, sure, Sarah's journey is what it is, but I have it harder, or it's different for me. I wanted other people's stories to illuminate the fact that we all have challenges in speaking. We all have embarrassing moments. We all have times where we go, oh, that could have gone a lot better. And I also thought it would be really interesting to hear others, I guess, most embarrassing moments and make the book just more fun to read.
I don't know what it is that's so much fun, but it is about embarrassing moments. Even my own embarrassing moments, I get a big kick out of it. And I would be disappointed if I didn't have them to chuckle over as time goes by. You added some of your own stories. How did you determine which of those to include and what not to do? What would be too much?
That is a great question that I wrestled with, honestly. Over and over, I would think about a story and I'd think, man, I really want to share this, but I'm not sure it fits. So I would overthink it. But what it came down to in the end, if I decided that my story was worthwhile enough to put in the book, it was because that story was a pivotal story in my life, if you will, a groundbreaking story or a turning point in my life. And I thought, what better story to include than one that made such an impression in my life? So that's how I ultimately determined if it made the cut or not.
Most people, well, I'm not sure if most people realize what a huge undertaking writing a book is and how really important it is once you get going in it. But a lot of lessons are learned through the process. I think authors are surprised sometimes at the things that they learn. What would be, if there's one very important thing that you learned through that, what would you like to share with other authors?
The thing that comes to mind when you ask the one most important thing is that the advice I got along the way was, don't write the book you think the world needs. Instead, write the book that you feel the most passionate about. If you feel passionate about it, that's what the world needs. So that really changed. It flipped everything on its head for me because I had been writing a book that was boring, but I thought, oh, everybody needs to know these things. And ultimately, I flipped the script, if you will, and changed the book to be more about wisdom than about teaching. And it was about the fear behind speaking, because I am really passionate about confidence building, but I couldn't do that if I didn't know and address fear on the regular. So on the daily, I am thinking about fear, and it instantly came to me, oh, I want to write a book about the public speaking fear. And then I realized it's not one fear, it's multiple fears. Every time I talk to an individual or a leader about their fear, they describe something a little different than the next person. So I started to really pay attention to what is this and how do I really make sense of this fear of public speaking that we always talk about. And so that's how the chapters were created, is just thinking about what types of fears are showing up inside of the fear of speaking.
I want to hear a little more about that because I am one of those people that for the entire first almost 60 years of my life did not, would not speak in front of a group, speak up in meetings. I was one of those people with a crippling fear of speaking. And you say something in your book that there's no such thing as a fear of speaking, and you've been touching on that just in this last question, but I want to hear more about that because it sure felt like a real fear of speaking to me.
Well, Nadia, to emphasize your situation, I would say it's many fears of speaking. So it isn't just one. It's if you were to describe it for me, you might and others might describe that I don't feel confident if I don't know what I'm going to say. So if I'm not prepared enough, if I'm not certain that I'm going to have something of value and that I'm going to be able to get through it all and remember it all. And so there's this whole underlying piece of the unknown. I am fearing the unknown because I want to make sure that all this goes right and it goes well. And so there's that, but then there's also the fear of judgment and what if the audience doesn't like what I have to say, or what if they reject me completely and say this woman doesn't have a clue what she's talking about, and I don't want to hear anything more from her, and she didn't do her research. And we leave ourselves open for all of this judgment when we stand in front of an audience. And so the fear is not to be underestimated. It is real, but it's more than one. It is one of my favorites is the fear of the audience's power. Now, we don't typically talk in terms of the audience's power, and it really wouldn't have occurred to me except for I've heard people describe how fearful they are of basically the mass of people in front of them. And the fact that these people in front of them have a combined energy that is bigger than them, it becomes this overwhelming feeling from the audience. And it's not even something that we really can put words to, but we feel it. We feel the energy coming from the audience. And that is something that we fear. If there were one person in front of us, it would be completely different. But there's lots to be learned from what keeps us blocked, what keeps us from going and speaking and sharing a message. And I can't get enough of it. I'm just fascinated by it.
Well, that is fantastic, and our time is up. I really needed to hear that. I realize now that also that if the audience loves you, that works in the opposite. And once you get used to the idea that the audience loves you, you could easily then go back for more of the same. So I'm getting a handle on what that's really like. But thank you so much for being on the show today. And thank you everyone for watching. You're watching In the Author's Corner, and we'll see you next time with a brand new guest.